Ruckerman.
SB and Sean breaking through the noise, serving real talk, the genuine choice. No pretense, no hidden schemes, just sports passion fueling dreams. From the field to the court, every play that's made. Real takes over fake debates. Turn it up, hear the honest sound. Unfiltered sports all year round. Discussions pure, no masquerade. Real takes over fake debates. Turn it up. Over fake debates. Real takes over fake debates. Real takes over fake debates.
And we are live. SBTalkSports, Sean Webb, real takes over fake debates. It is Monday. We are back. Sean, how you feeling today, brother?
Doing good, SB. How you doing, man?
Doing good, man. We back at it. Got a lot of good things to talk about in the sports world. I know your boy been out for a while, but we back. And we got a lot of things to talk about, though, Sean, because we might be getting close to NBA expansion with a certain NBA team that was just sold. We got a lot of controversy going on in the sports world on the court and off the court, with on the court being Jimmy Butler's return to Miami. And you know, Sean is the consistent Heat fan of the show, so I definitely want to hear what Sean got to say about that. We had some Jackie Robinson drama that led to RG3 and Stephen A having words. Then also we got to finish off our We also got to finish off our off-season prediction wish list. We're going to do the NFC South. And last but not least, is it time for Aaron Rodgers to retire? And also, it's a certain team that just got good. It's suggesting new playoff formats. Now, do you think it's crazy for them to do that? But, Sean, we got to start the list off right. The Boston Celtics have been sold for a record $6.1 billion. Whew. Woo! And we didn't know if it was going to happen this fast or not, but it did. Sean, what was your reaction to Boston Celtics getting sold? Because it happened out the blue. You know, it was. You know, sometimes when things this big go on, they'll be like, "This possibly is in the works." Nobody really said nothing, so I'm like, man, what's going on?
Well, SB Wick Grossbeck, the governor for the Celtics, did announce several months ago that they were going to be putting the team up for sale. Of course, you never know how long the process is going to take, because obviously you have different groups that want to put bids together, things of that nature, blah, blah, blah. And then obviously, you know, the first part of the process is for the current governor's group of a team to, you know, accept a bid, and they have an agreement in place. And then, of course, you know, it's got to go through being approved by the board of governors, all of that stuff. And so, you know, again, I think, you know, it wasn't a shock in that place. And obviously, when you look at just the valuations of these teams going up, you know, the Suns, you know, a couple years ago,
yes,
you know, were purchased by Matt Ishbia for about $4.2 billion, I believe. And so you were seeing the valuation of these teams going up, you know, quite a bit, and especially depending on the market. And when you talk about Boston and the Celtics, obviously we don't have to go into, you know, the history and legacy of that franchise and that market. It was going to be a pretty hefty price. So I wasn't surprised at all. Obviously, you know, this is a huge deal. And you know, and again, not surprised at all. Again, I think what will be interesting, you know, for the Celtics, because the sale isn't complete, there's going to be still a process over the next several months. The new ownership and the Wick Grossbeck have agreed to work together in terms of, you know, decisionings about team and things of that nature moving forward until the sale is complete. But, you know, I think it's going to be interesting to see, particularly this summer, after the season's over, you know, what the Celtics do in terms of their roster, just because of the cost of their roster. You know, with Jason Tatum's extension kicking in after this season, Jaylen Brown's extension kicked in this year, this season. You know, they're going to have to make some decisioning, just because, again, the cost of keeping that team together could be very prohibitive, you know, for them.
You just spent $6 million. You ain't gonna be able to pay everybody. You got to recoup some of that money real quick.
Well, it's not even that. It's just the new CBA, and the rules around, you know, second aprons and just the restrictive nature of the second apron, and in particular, the first apron has restrictions, but the second apron obviously is very restrictive. That team is going to get really, really expensive. And so, you know, let me be very clear. Jason Tatum and Jaylen Brown aren't going anywhere.
No.
You know, but and again, I don't think Derek White's going anywhere. I think, you know, the person to watch out for is probably Drew Holiday. What happens with him, just because of his salary and, you know, things of that nature.
I think Drew was already talking about, like, during his Milwaukee run, that he was going to be like on the tail end. I think after this run, Drew might retire. If he want to be Rodgers retired.
Well, he did sign a contract extension not too long ago. So
I mean, when that money on the table, you know, like you said, honey, I thought about retiring, but they offered me this bag, you know, so I had to take that money. The money on the table.
Yeah.
But for me, you know, only reason I was shocked about it was just like, you know, I know we've been hearing talks about the team getting sold, or they're in the process of trying to find a buyer for the team. But the only problem that I was thinking of, like, how quick it happened, is because of $6 billion. Like, man, you just got to use. That's a lot of money. That ain't no fly by night money, you know, that just to have to just pull up overnight. So that's the only thing is why I thought the process was going to take a little bit longer. But to sell, like you said, the Boston Celtics is one of the most historic franchises in the NBA. Only thing that I'm worried about is, and hopefully, well, we find out shortly, but hopefully he's not another one of these owners with like a different agenda. I hope he actually wants to buy the team to be a part of the team. We obviously seen that what just happened with the Dallas Mavericks. Sorry, Dallas Mavericks fans, to bring up that, but it's from the point of, like, a team just lost a franchise superstar because they couldn't get what they want. So it was going to be petty to the city of the team. Hey, you don't want to give me what I want. What it is. It could be the casino. It could be a factory that's inside to make Boston baked beans, whatever it could be. But it's just like, I don't want that owner to be there for that. Like, actually try to own the team because you want to be a part of the team. I think the best new owner that the NBA has got, it's got to be the Clippers owner, Steve Ballmer. He got the deep pockets. He's showing that he cares about the team. He even changing the stadium up to make it better fan experience. So that tells me that, hey, this owner actually bought the team because he wants to be a part of the team and help grow the team. So that's the only thing I really ask for if you get a new owner. I don't want no more owners with different agendas that you come in ruining basketball by trading, playing like Jason Tatum on the Knicks or Jason Tatum on the Lakers. Now Jaylen Brown on some other stack team or some other big media team, and they trading them for nothing. And the only person that really get hurt out of this is more of the fans.
Yeah, so Bill Chisholm, who made the purchase, he's got roots in that area. He's from Massachusetts originally, so I think he's a Celtics fan first and foremost.
Okay,
a Boston Celtics fan, to be specific. So yeah, I don't think he has any ill intent with that team. I think a couple of things that he's probably going to have to focus on. Obviously, you know, looking at, you know, the spending on the roster, but also their arena situation, which, you know, is, you know, obviously, you know, a big part of this, because they're in an arena now that's over 30 years old. And it's about time either to update, like seriously renovate and update the arena, which I'm sure they've done renovations, or to, you know, consider building a new arena. somewhere within the Boston area. Again, that's not immediately on the table, but I know that's something that you're probably going to see some traction on in the next year or so.
Now, Sean, what else? Something that this, I'm glad you brought up traction, because what I think this move is brought traction to the NBA expansion. And, this has been big that we've been talking about, but obviously you have definitely pointed this out multiple times. Like, the only thing that might slow down the process of the expansion is Boston getting sold. Boston ended up getting sold now. How soon is the NBA expansion inbound? Because I'm thinking maybe 35, maybe 2040. I don't know about 2030, but what you thinking? What you thinking the inbound it could be?
I think you're going to see NBA expansion before the end of the decade. I think 2029 is probably the year. 2028 or 2029 is probably most realistic. That's 3 to 4 years from now. Mm-hmm. I do know before the season, Adam Silver did talk about, now that they got the media rights taken care of and all of those things, that expansion would be discussed at the next Board of Governors meeting. But again, that's a process. You have to really you have to open it up. Even if there are certain markets that you would like to target, you do have to open it up, and you have to, really at least show some level of desire to hear multiple pitches from different markets, things of that nature. But ultimately, the NBA and the Board of Governors are going to choose. I'm saying 2 because I think it's going to expand by 2 teams, 2 markets that they believe will be viable, but also that can pay the expansion fee, which is a big part of it, which is why, in part, the Celtics sale mattered, because that will factor into what the expansion fees are ultimately.
Then imagine it, because I'm like, it got to be only 2, because I can't see you add four teams to be like outrageous.
Yeah, and it wouldn't. And if you added 4 teams, the last time the NBA added 4 teams, it was over 2 seasons. So they added it was Minnesota and Miami the first year. No, I'm sorry. No, it was Minnesota and it was Minnesota and Miami the first year. And no, I'm sorry. It was Charlotte and Miami the first year, and it was in Minnesota the next year. So it was, if you do expand by that much, and again, I don't see them going to 34 teams. I think it's going to be 32, just because that's a good, really solid, even number. It's going to be both teams coming in the same season, more than likely. But yeah, whenever you expand, because again, remember, the issue with expansion is you have to have an expansion draft. That's part of the process. Teams get to protect their top 8 players, so to speak. You don't want to water down the league too much with expansion. Yeah. So that's why 2 teams is probably right. Where if it was more than 2 teams, I'd be very, very surprised if the NBA even went there. Yeah.
Now, and then now you bring up the subject of 2 teams. Obviously, the 2 hottest markets that's begging for a team that needs to see. One is because every team that went there so far has been successful. Yes. And one of those teams that have been successful is in a league where they're trying to grow, and that's in Las Vegas with the Aces. So once the Aces stepped down and solidified, they was like, okay, now Vegas is like a legit like spot now. So this Vegas makes sense money wise. And also the history of the NBA, everybody's been begging for one in Seattle to bring the Supersonics back, and the Supersonics have been begging for an NBA team to return. So we can obviously say, with Las Vegas and Seattle being the favorites, is they a guaranteed lock, or what else do you see another team coming from?
I would say they definitely are the favorites in the room, certainly. Mexico City is probably the most intriguing one for me, just because it's still in North America, obviously. But Mexico City is huge, and every time they host games in Mexico City, the turnout is crazy. There's a big, big craze for it there. but I'm saying them third, behind clearly, obviously, as you mentioned, Seattle and Vegas. The issue is again, there's a lot of things that factor in, but you got to talk about, the local media rights, being able to broadcast, getting local broadcast rights. Do you already have an NBA ready arena, which Mexico City obviously does? They host NBA games there. But we know Vegas has one. We know Seattle has one with Climate Pledge Arena and T-Mobile Arena, in those markets. So, it's the things that you would have to typically worry about with the expansion. Some of those things are already checked off when you talk about arena. You talk about viable sports markets, because you can look at the other teams in those markets, as you mentioned.
Yep.
Mexico City is kind of behind, the curve in those situations. So I would think it's Seattle and Vegas, and then eventually you'll see. What will be interesting is, again, what happens with the divisions, because again, there's three divisions in each conference. Do they go to 4 divisions? Do they go to 2 divisions in each conference? Do they have an uneven division? Do they get rid of divisions altogether and just say we're going to have an East and a West? So
what team you going to move to the East if you get 2 teams that's close to the West Coast? Because that's a lot of things we talk about.
Right. So so New Orleans would make the most sense. And I know people talk about Memphis.
Remember Memphis is right there, though.
Well, remember why Memphis is in the West. Memphis is in the West because they were in Vancouver.
Yeah.
So they were already in the West. New Orleans was in the East because they came from Charlotte.
Right.
So when they added the second Charlotte, when they added the Bobcats, that's when they moved New Orleans, out of the East to the West. So, it's, I think, just from a historical perspective, and also just because New Orleans is more southern and its proximity to Florida, I think it's probably going to be New Orleans. I tell you this, if you play 2K and you have Do My League or, whatever, if you do expansion and you add 2 teams in Seattle and Vegas, the team the computer moves is New Orleans.
The boys all the time.
Yeah. So I'm just telling you. So I think it's not a lock. I think it's going to be a conversation between New Orleans and Memphis. The only other team I could see maybe having an argument maybe is Minnesota, but even then, I think that's going to be. No. I don't see it happening. But I think
see it happen.
Yeah, Memphis and New Orleans will probably be the 2 teams that will have the best argument for it.
I mean, with how the Eastern Conference looked to the Western Conference, I'll be trying to fight for it, and how much the Pelicans struggles in the West, I'll be begging to go back to the East too. And then if the Grizzlies was in the East right now, they'll be what, top 5? They in like top 5, 4 seed fighting for the 3 seed. So that's why I'm like, right. I don't know. You can make that. And then how the Grizzly team is stacked up, but they can play in the East. And how that team is stacked up, but
yeah, and I do think, not to belabor the point, I do think part of the discussion will be which team is more set in their market in terms of long-term viability. Well, if we're just being very honest, the Grizzlies are very set.
Yeah,
right. They've had more success. The Pelicans haven't had any real success, so. Sometimes to help a team, you may say, hey, we're going to move you to this conference or this division just so you can, have a better chance competitively, because that's the other part for the NBA. It's the competitive balance. And I think New Orleans, from a competitive balance standpoint, would make most sense in the East, but that's just me.
Yeah, and when we get to talking about like the competitive balance, because with expansion takes that word away sometimes, because people like you worry about the watered down things that's going on when it comes to the expansion. So I think the most established team probably will stay, like you said. I agree with you. I think they'll stay where they're at. And for me, I just think Seattle, the crazy part about it is I think Vegas is a lock because of what's been going on with Vegas. Seattle, they question it, but I don't know if the NBA can handle the drawback they get if they expand. So say if they do Vegas and Mexico City, don't bring back Seattle. It's going to be a crazy uproar, and I don't know if the NBA could handle that, but it possibly could happen.
I think there was, albeit you can't say it publicly, but I do think there was a handshake agreement that when the NBA expanded again after the Sonics relocated to Oklahoma City. The reason why they had to rebrand was because if the NBA did expand again, that Seattle was going to get a team.
Yeah.
The big thing for me is if you do that, you make sure all that Sonics get all the history back as well. Because right now, all their history is in Oklahoma City.
The Thunder said they'd give them their history, though. They already reported said that.
Okay. Yeah. All right. So that's the most important thing to me. To me, once you decide to rebrand and change, mascots and all that stuff, the history of that team should stay in that city to me. And that's in any sport. I firmly believe that you decide to rebrand, you're basically creating a new team. So start your new team with new history. That's me. And I dare somebody to argue me down about that, but
only thing they can say is like, they carrying the team legacy, willing to keep it relevant. Like you said, if it's from this team, it should be this team.
Right.
That's how I agree. Yeah. So we see how it go. But no, I'm glad you brought up competitiveness, because we got to talk about the late season playoff push right now. OKC is looking like they're going to secure the number 1 overall record right now. They're on a 6-game win streak. We got the Lakers right here with the 4 seed, 43-27. We got the Warriors, since Jimmy Butler has been making a great run, 8-2 in their last 10 games, 41-30. Then we got these play-in teams in the West: Timberwolves, Clippers, Kings, Suns. Then we go to the East. They look like the Cavaliers might secure the number 1 seed with the 57 wins right now. The Knicks at 3rd. The Bucks dropped to the 5th. The Detroit Pistons at the 6th seed with 40 wins. They got the same amount of wins as the Milwaukee Bucks right now, which is outstanding for them. Then we go play-in teams: 7, 8, 9, 10. Shout them out. 2 questions for you. But the 7, 8, 9, 10 is Hawks, Magic, Bulls, and Miami Heat. I'm happy with my Chicago Bulls are doing, but man, we win the game at the wrong time. But I got a 2-part question for you. If we go both conference, we can start with the West or East first.
We can start in the East.
All right, we're going to start in the East. Most dangerous team that's not the top 2 seed, and the most I'm trying to think of a good play-in question, because is it really dangerous when you in a play-in?
Man, we did see a play-in team get to the finals a couple years ago. So
okay, we can do that there. Okay, I got to bet I'm gonna reverse it. Which top 3 seed should be the most concerned, or that you are most concerned about? Cavs, Celtics, Knicks, and the most dangerous team outside of the top 3. I ain't gonna leave it just to play in. So you have to say it for East.
For me, easily it's the Knicks. It's the Knicks. Obviously, Jalen Brunson's been out with an ankle injury.
Yeah.
But also, I think Cat has had a great season with the Knicks. But I think they brought Cat there to get to the next level in New York in terms of getting out of the second round. I just don't see either that team beating either the Cavs or the Celtics in a second round series. And right now they would play the Celtics in the second round if things hold true. So the Knicks easily. Probably, I'll tell you this, the team that probably would concern me most, and I know they were a laughingstock early in the season for a lot of people, is Milwaukee. I think Kuzma has been an excellent pickup, excellent fit. Obviously, they still have, Giannis playing at a very all-NBA first-team level. Dame is still playing, very well. For as much as people clown Doc, they got it turned around. And I think a big thing that they've done is, figure out, some strengths defensively and kind of lean into that. But I think they're a team. I don't think, to be clear, I don't think they beat the Celtics or the Cavs in a second round series. But I do think they are a team that could, go on a good run in the East. So I'm going to say Milwaukee.
Okay. For me in the East, I'm going to definitely have to agree with you on the Knicks. I'm highly concerned about the Knicks because they can't find a way to beat any team at the top of the league, and sometimes they really come in close games, and usually in the playoffs they're going to be in close games. But also my secondary concern is the team fatigue. Obviously, Bridges came out and said that about Tibbs playing the starters too many minutes, and I have dealt with Tom Thibodeau a lot of times, so I already know how it goes with Tom Thibodeau. And with that being said, that's what makes Major League concerned with the Knicks. Then you got Jalen Brunson off an ankle injury. How healthy he's going to be coming into the playoffs, because you're never really fully healthy. And then if you get injured this late in the season, you're never really going to have the full time to recover. Then the most dangerous team for me in the East, Sean, I'm going to have to definitely pick different than you. I'm going to Detroit Pistons. This team is young. This team is tough. They play defense. And the crazy part about it is the team they got in the first round, if the playoffs will start today, will be the Knicks. And I would be concerned for the Knicks if I had to play the Pistons. Now, should the Knicks win? Yes, but I guarantee if they play the Pistons taking them at least 6-7 games, just off the strength of the toughness and the defense that they play. And the young, and they young and gonna run them up and down the court. So I would be concerned. I would not want to play Detroit. If I'm any top team, I don't want to play Detroit in the first round.
I would say Detroit. I think, given their physicality, they kind of embrace
the bad
boys, and really that last Pistons team, the Chauncey and Big Ben and Sheed, and they really kind of embrace the identities of those teams. My concern is outside of Cade in a playoff series, I do wonder about their ability to score the basketball, especially in the half court when the game slows down, because they're very Cade dependent in the half court. And especially, and I would honestly, if they had Jaden Ivey, I would be a lot more excited about them in the playoffs, just because, again, we know his ability to kind of push the ball and get end to end, and and also they're just kind of their youth and inexperience. They're kind of a year early. I think.
They like a year too early.
Yeah, but I agree with you. I think just they're playing with house money, so anything they do in the playoffs would be just very.
They weren't supposed to be here right now.
Exactly. So I think they are when a teams like that. I agree with you that they tend to be a little more dangerous because they got nothing to lose. We ain't supposed to be here. We ain't supposed to be here anyway. So.
The only other thing that I possibly think they could have them in the playoffs, though, Sean, is like their bigs is like outpunt the other bigs, like dominate the boards and shoot a high percentage on the inside with putbacks, offensive boards, but also depend on your vets to open up the floor with their jump shooting for K, and that would be with Beasley and Tim Hardaway Jr. If they could they could shoot a high 40 clip from 3, that'd be even worse. That'd be even worse for the Knicks if they had to play them. But now let's go to the West. What top 3 seeds concern you, and then what is the most dangerous team? Your top outside of the top 3, your top 3 seeds is Thunder, Rockets, Nuggets. So
for me, it's the Rockets. Again, they tend to go in these.
They play with house money too, by the way, because they a year ahead. They like 2 years ahead, honestly. No way they're the number 2 seed.
But but if you watch them the second half of last season, you start to kind of see the Ime Udoka effect kind of taking shape. Obviously, they have guys who've won, and played some playoff basketball. Van Fleet, obviously. Dylan Brooks has played playoff basketball as well.
Yes.
They are. They're not the Pistons because, again, I think the Pistons are very Cade-centric. Yeah. This Rockets team, they tend to play, to me, a little more some of their parts, and they're athletic. They get after you. You have to be on top of your A game. The concern for me is just when they go through kind of those droughts, and particularly late in games, they still don't really have kind of that guy, that closer, so to speak, in the fourth quarter. Necessarily, they kind of maybe do it a little bit by committee, some nights. But so it would be the Rockets for me of the top 3 teams. And of the teams that are below them.
It's a lot. There's a couple.
It's a couple, but I'm going to say this. It's the Clippers for me.
Ooh, you going to Clippers.
It's the Clippers for me. Harden has been on a tear.
Mm-hmm.
This last month or so. Obviously, Zubac has played. He's had the best season of his career.
Mm-hmm.
When Kawhi has been healthy, Kawhi has looked pretty doggone good.
He don't look bad when he plays. It's just when he play, when is he gonna play? That's the only problem with Kawhi.
Yeah, and then you and I both were very much on the Norman Powell should have been an all-star this year.
Yes.
And the Ty Lue, I'm a huge Ty Lue fan. I think Ty Lue great for a championship winning coach. He's probably actually underappreciated when you talk about the best coach in the league.
It's because he's on the Clippers. Nobody cares about the Clippers. That's
right? Yeah. But I would say they're probably the most dangerous team. But the asterisk is fully healthy. I think if they're fully healthy, they're a team that can go on a run in the West, and it wouldn't shock me.
Yeah. For me, Sean, I'm gonna go the opposite of you because from the Rockets, the reason why I'm not concerned about the Rockets because one, they playing with house money, and two, they got a couple of vets on their team that have played and won, and I actually like Ime Udoka, so I think they'll be right. But even though they're the second seed, nobody expected them to be like everybody expected the Rockets to be a play-in team. So they, even though they're number 2 seed and they're 2 years ahead, they playing with house money for me. It's the OKC Thunder, and I know a lot of people are like, "Well, you OKC, look at their record." My problem with OKC is when it comes to SGA. Now I notice has become a narrative, but every joke or when people say something about you, it's some truth to it. I do think SGA is a free throw line merchant. When I say this, and I'm saying it because of when the playoffs, when they get physical and you don't get them calls, and those shots are becoming bad shots. I just watched the game yesterday against the Clippers where I know it was no Jalen Williams. I know it wasn't no Chad Holmgren, but some of those shots that SGA was taking were questionable shots, and those shots he was taking questionable, he was just looking for fouls. So then also, if that being said, when that goes away, can Chet, can J-Dub carry the low scoring or keep them consistently defensively with SGA being out, SGA not being as efficient as he is? That's why I'm really concerned about that. I think OKC is going to be great, but I'm very concerned for them as a number 1 seed. The most dangerous team, Sean, he easy to say the obvious answer to the Lakers. I got 2. It's the Lakers and the Warriors. But I'm really going to go Warriors because they're a 6 seed. And I think like Nuggets, I would want to play the Warriors. Honestly, I would want to play the Lakers or the Warriors, but the Lakers are keeping over team, so they're going to mess around and be a top seed. But I would not want to play the Warriors in the first round if I was the Rockets or the Thunder. Because you got Steph Curry now. Steph Curry does what he does, but Jimmy Butler adds a different dynamic from being a guy who can attack the mid-range. And when he attacks the mid-range, he can pass, he can score in the post, he can shoot that fadeaway. And now there's he got that same dynamic that Draymond Green had when he used to do the mid-post or high post thing like that with pass. But now Draymond Green is probably just there to do a handoff. But now Jimmy Butler is there for a point of attack. So and then you also with Jimmy Butler, you get better defensively. So Draymond Green has a guy who helped him on the defensive side also. But then also with Jimmy Butler also bring that helps the clutch ability, the experience that he already has had by leading the Miami Heat to the finals multiple times. The experience to show up in the playoffs. Playoff Jimmy is not just a nickname, not like Paul George. When you try to call that Playoff Pete, no. Playoff Jimmy was given to him. He didn't call himself Playoff Jimmy. He earned that. And I still see Jimmy doing the same dynamic. And then now you got a guy with Steph Curry in him to make Steph Curry's job easier. Then you add Jimmy Butler on the defensive side to make Draymond Green's job easier. People are saying Draymond Green is now a defensive player of the year race now because how great defensive they got since the addition of Jimmy Butler. So I would have said the Lakers, but the Lakers the 4th seed. But I'm going to go Warriors since they're at the 6th seed and they will end up playing the bottom seed. I know the Thunder and the Rockets. I'm praying they don't play the Nuggets. I gotta see the Nuggets get beat, but the Warriors would definitely give them a run for their money. Now, the reason I also brought up Jimmy Butler, Sean, tomorrow. Jimmy G, and the G stand for gets, buckets will return to Miami. As a Heat fan, what's your reaction to this? And what's the percentage on Jimmy Butler getting booed tomorrow?
My reaction is I was expecting this at some point.
Mm-hmm.
You know, when you get traded, eventually you got to come back to
a little earlier than you expected, though. Usually people wait your whole year.
I mean, normally, but I mean, again, you know, schedule is the schedule.
Mm-hmm.
I think Jimmy Butler I don't think he's going to be booed. I don't think anything like that. That's not really how, you know, Heat Nation gets down. I think they understand, you know, it's like a relationship. You know, it just because it ended badly doesn't mean you didn't have some good times together.
Yes.
And I think that's the perspective a lot of people will have. You know, the last year was not great, but it doesn't take away, you know, what happened the first few years together, particularly when you talk about 2020 and 2023 in particular. So, and everybody's going to always appreciate Jimmy Butler for that. My hope at a certain point, more for the organization and for Jimmy Butler, is that eventually there's some, you know, as time passes, there'll be just water under the bridge and they'll be able to honor him appropriately at a, you know, a certain point. But for the most part, I don't expect him to be booed, and I don't expect him to get a rousing standing ovation either. Because again, you know, how you acted on the way out didn't necessarily sit well with a lot of folks, but at the same time, like I said, you know, the last year doesn't take away from the entire time together. Who is Seat? I don't know.
Oh yeah, I was saying who's Seat? Tiffany, who is Seat?
Yeah, I don't know who Seat is, but anyway,
the autocorrect got Tiff. Yeah, the autocorrect got Tiff. But for me with this reaction, it will, trust me, you guys. I hope y'all don't expect it to be like when KD went back to OKC. It ain't gonna be like that. It ain't gonna be like when LeBron first went back to Cleveland. It ain't gonna be like that. Only one problem, because it's Miami. You know, everybody in Miami, they got big bellies and they living a rich life. So they ain't sitting there care enough to be booing you. They gonna boo you just for it, but they ain't gonna go to the far making signs and all that. OKC, Cleveland, ain't no beach out there, so they ain't got nothing else to do but boo you. So they got time to make signs. Ain't no dude coming off his yacht or leaving out his house with his toes out in the good weather in Miami finna go make a sign that said F Jimmy Butler. So trust me. They ain't gonna do all that. You living in Miami for a reason. It's paradise. But I think it's gonna be big. It sucks for you guys because I wish it would have been like y'all have been playing better since Jimmy been gone. Y'all really been falling off the map a little bit, which it kind of sucks because now they've been like, oh, okay, now this game really actually means something that both teams win. But I think the Heat is going to get up to play this game. I think Jimmy's going to get up to play his game, and then if Jimmy go off, he's going to be talking. So be prepared. He's going to be talking. You should have paid me. You go Tyler Hero over me. You probably get something like that. I don't know if he got too much love for Tyler Hero, but be prepared. Bam Adebayo. Nah, he love Bam. He ain't gonna do Bam. Like, he got love for Bam. Tyler Hero, maybe. He might do that too, but we'll see. What y'all think the Miami crowd reaction is going to be? Comment down below. Let us know. Sean, we getting close to salute. That'll be into our salute seat. Y'all not to keep making this seat a Reddit joke. Stop calling Sean seat. But I want to go real quick to MLB predictions because the season has started. I think we got spring baseball going on right now because this story for the lead to something deeper than rap. But real quick, you already know. You can tell me something, but if it ain't the Yankees, I don't really care. And then my prediction is Yankees, we going to go back to the World Series and redeem myself. I'm stamping it. But what about you? What you got for some MLB predictions of what you looking forward to this season?
Well, obviously, you look at, the teams that spent, money this free agency. Obviously, the Mets, with Juan Soto, and obviously the Dodgers continuing to spend the way they spend. Boston, stepping up to spend some money that they hadn't really spent the last couple of years. You know, I do think it certainly you're going to see, I think, a lot of people paying attention to those teams. And obviously, but the big question is will the Dodgers do it again in terms of, you know, repeat as World Series champions? It's a long season, a very long season.
Yes.
You know, there's some teams that, you know, probably had great expectation to have some health issues going into the season, like the Dodgers with Mookie Betts, just to name a few. And obviously the Yankees without, you know, Garrett Cole, and Luis Hill, excuse me. So, you know, it's going to be interesting, but it's going to be one of those long game seasons. I don't think you're going to see too many teams panic if they don't start out well. You know, in April, it's going to be okay. Let's see where we are. You know, end of May and June, and you know, and things of that nature. But it's going to be an interesting season. But you know, I'm rooting for, obviously, you know, you see the hat, you know who I rock with, but I'm also rooting for whoever plays the Mets. And I hope the Mets go 5-157 for the season. I hope they only win 5 games.
Forget the Mets. Get them cheating old Dodgers up out of here, man, bro. How they keep signing people?
Well, they're not cheating. It's within the rules. And again, you know, the question is whether or not baseball is ready for a hard or a more structured salary cap. Should I say not hard, but a structured salary cap. They're doing it within the rules. And, you know, so
I wonder why nobody want to watch it, because they be like, when people be like, wow, watching baseball, the Dodgers got the Monstars, all the All-Stars, and come on, man. And they almost got why my bad going blank, because he just signed with the Mets. Why is my man going blank?
Soto.
Yeah, I didn't even want to say his name, but yeah, they almost got him, and I just been like, yo, come on, man. But you know, it is what it is. But young man got his money. I ain't mad at it. But Sean, the reason why I brought up baseball, because we had a Jackie Robinson story that kind of took the internet by storm, and then it also led into some sports media beef. So, Sean, you can explain it better to me, because obviously I had just caught on to the story today. You know, I had lots of going on. But so the Pentagon removed, then restored Jackie Robinson webpage of his military history amid Trump anti-DEA purge. What's going on here, Sean? I'm trying to figure this out, because it's not making sense to me to even do this. Why you just out the blue, you know, do that, then restore it? Like, what's going on, Sean?
Yeah, so basically there was an executive order that came down to remove any references to, you know, DEI from federal web pages and, you know, media and all that stuff. And so Jackie Robinson's story was prominent because Jackie Robinson obviously was an Army officer, and certainly we understand, you know, Jackie Robinson, what he did, you know, with baseball and things of that nature. But so Jackie Robinson was one of those stories you want to highlight, you know, if you're the DOD. There was major backlash behind it, and there was also, you know, a question about why was it removed, and there was a statement released that basically said, the initial statement basically said that DEI is not a part of the military, and blah blah blah, and that it's essentially a non-issue in the military, so to speak. Well, that's a different conversation. There's been a lot of conversation, of course, around DEI, but when you talk about Jackie Robinson, what this essentially was initially was erasure. You know, it's not a pleasant history, so we don't want to talk about it. And if we can erase it, it's easier for us to just avoid any conversation around it. And certainly also when you erase history, it makes it easier to repeat history. If you know, you know. So it was a lot of firestorm around the story, things of that nature. But they didn't just remove. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Now my thing is this though, Sean. Like, okay, you're trying to use the anti-DEI, and for anybody who don't know, I think everybody knows what diversity, equality, inclusion, right?
Equity, yeah, diversity, equity,
inclusion, inclusion. I'm sorry. You can't use this. My problem come in like you can't try to erase history. History is there now. It's like you stepping out of a borderline of treacherous territory to me, because now that's what I'm trying to. I don't want to say what I want to say, but you're trying to wash history away. But you know what I'm really trying to say. To a certain point with the history, to make certain people look good, or make certain other people look bad, or just to push an agenda. DEI shouldn't be used for that. And then at the end of the day, you can't erase. I have a problem with history being erased. Like, so if it doesn't benefit your agenda that you're pushing, or if it shows who you are in a bad light, oh, we got to get rid of that. So we're going to just act like it ain't happening. That's what I'm feeling, Sean. So now, if we didn't have, because it seemed like it only changed because people was in an uproar. So if it wasn't in an uproar, then you wouldn't have changed. You change it back. So what is going on? Like I feel like I'm trying to keep it as PG as it possibly can, and not trying to go too one sided one way. But you understand what I'm saying? Like, it feel like they're just trying to wash certain parts of history away to make certain people look good or bad. Or if it's not to do that, it's to push an agenda. So it's not even really even DEI involved. It's just you just putting this on top of it just to cover your behind for saying what you're really trying to do.
Right. And you realize what has happened over the last few years, especially, is that terms like DEI and woke and have been essentially co-opted by a certain group. And has been turned into slurs because it's not inclusive. The diversity, equity, and inclusion, and diversity. People don't really understand why DEI exists, why affirmative action existed. I'm not going to get into that. We've talked about that before. I would encourage anybody to go do their research to understand why the need for it existed, right? And particularly in the United States. Yes. So, to be very, very clear, there are things historically that happen that, again, are being pushed and brushed aside for why it existed and why it was needed. And rather than talking about the benefits of it, people have taken it and turned it into, oh, this isn't fair. And this doesn't, it's one group in particular. And I'm not going to say which group, but just understand what DEI is and understand which group doesn't necessarily fit in the construct of DEI. So if we don't fit in this construct, it must go away. And that's what they're doing. And that's essentially what they're trying to do.
Only thing that I wish when things like this come up, when you do something drastic like this, or when you say something it doesn't fit or is not fair, can you just do your research to see what exact reason these things were put into place? And then maybe you can open your eyes if you're not just trying to be ignorant to the situation and be like, okay, I felt this way that it's unfair, but then I go back to my research. Oh man, this happened. Oh, so they had to add this because this happened. It's not even, it's bigger than what's going on. What I'm thinking about right now. So this little thing that I'm thinking about saying it ain't fair. No, it's bigger than what I got going on. But nobody's gonna do that. Or it's not even that they want to, they don't care to. And that's where the problem really comes into play. But then you can't have that master that you don't care, then expect us to be like, when you say something that's it ain't fair, or it's not, it doesn't fit me, then I should care. No, I'm not gonna care either, at all. You can kick rocks with that. But also, Sean, RG3 this same conversation led to RG3 and Stephen A. Smith getting into a beef because RG3 tweeted this, which I'm gonna put the tweet on the screen. Put us in this mode and take the title off the screen real quick. So with RG3, he obviously seen what happened with the Jackie Robinson thing. And then, Stephen A. Smith, who's been getting into politics a lot lately, has pretty much, he's getting into politics now, and he has been talking about it. So RG3 tweets, sports shows on TV should be about sports and not politics, because obviously Stephen A. Smith brought it up on First Take. And Stephen A. Smith definitely responded back to RG3, but I want to let's dissect this. Did he also pinned it down? Because I guess people had to be saying something to him about it, like RG3, what are you talking about? This and that. And then there's a lot of other reasons why people come at RG3 too, with him being he's more like a Carlton type of guy. That's the most PG way I can kind of say it. So he's like that type of lane. So RG3 kind of get shots taken at him a couple times about stuff like that. If you get the meaning, you get it. If you don't, you don't. But then he tweeted right after this, under this tweet. This tweet is not about Jackie Robinson. His significance can never and should never be erased. Breaking the color barrier in baseball itself is not political. Jesse Owens winning 4 gold medals in itself was not political. Jack Johnson becoming the first black boxing heavyweight champion in itself was not political. They all have political ramifications. They all challenge the status quo of the racial barrier to fair play, race relations, and civil rights, which you just that should always be acknowledged and never forgotten. They shouldn't be used as an excuse to push political agendas on sports shows on national television to an audience there to consume sports content, Sean. Now, hold on. Let me get us back up here real quick. So, Sean, after dissecting the RG3 tweet, because the only thing that was like tripping me out before I let you go off was when he said they all have political ramifications. Cool. They all challenge the status quo of racial barriers to fair play, race relations, and civil rights. So doesn't that make it political because of the status quo that they didn't he just literally contradicted himself? Or am I looking at it wrong, or didn't this sentence right here just literally debunk everything he just said right there? Or if I'm looking at it wrong, please tell me I'm looking at it wrong.
So there's a lot to unpack here, SB. And I want to say this really quickly. I don't hate Robert Griffin III.
Me either. No.
When he got let go from ESPN, it bothered me because I thought he was really good as a football analyst on ESPN. And
corny, but he was good. Corny, but he was good.
Yeah. I mean, he's as Rob Parker from FS1 said, he's a cornball brother, and he wasn't lying.
But
no. I want to be very careful because I don't want to attack Robert Griffin's upbringing and anything of that nature.
Mm-hmm.
But I think there's reasons for why he is the way he is. And there's undercurrents that, again, I don't necessarily want to get into. Yes, but one thing I do want to say in true and fair honesty, Robert Griffin III is the epitome of the brother who does everything in his power to be seen as colorless in a space that always will see color. He does this thinking it's going to be easier for him to be accepted.
think so.
It doesn't work that way. It never has. And in the fairness of his statement, it was so out of left field. It was like, what? It was like, what are you talking about? Like, what are you talking about? But again, this is Robert Griffin III is an all lives matter type. That's who he is. That's who he is. You know, it's all lives matter. You know, all lives matter. All lives matter. You know, that's who he is. Let's not be disingenuous about that part of it. His actions show someone who, again, it's like you call it just living your life and having your fun and things like that. By historical definition, is buck dancing.
Yeah.
But he doesn't fully understand that because he doesn't necessarily want to, I don't think.
He never had it. I feel like how it feels like he came up, which I'm not gonna say 100% fact. How it seems like, I ain't gonna say feels because we don't more promotion. It seems like he never had an experience in his life to have the proper understanding. He's smart enough to know what's going on. He's not. RG3 is by far not them. He's smart enough to understand what's going on, but he won't necessarily get it fully because I feel like he never experienced nothing like that.
I think there's probably some truth there, SB, but I also think just because you don't experience something yourself doesn't mean you get to act as if it doesn't exist.
Right.
When there was a rapper, and I'm not going to say their name, but there was a rapper who basically said they didn't believe in racism because of a situation when they accidentally shot themselves. It was a white cop who came to their defense and to help them. That in itself does not mean racism does not exist.
And I think he took that comment back because he said he never experienced it. And that's, like I said, that's what the problem is. Just because you don't experience something don't mean it don't exist.
Right. There's things in my life I haven't experienced, but I will admit they do exist. I just myself have not experienced them.
That's like me saying it's not possible to drown because I've never been in experience the situation of drowning.
Right.
Like, just saying something simple, but you get what I'm saying, though. Yeah.
Right. So I do think there's something there, and I will say that after all the backlash, and there was a lot of backlash behind his comments, he did try to release a statement, basically doing damage control, but the statement showed that he was trying to do damage control, but there was no there was no meaningful reflection, right? If you make a statement that receives that level of vitriol in response, something in you has to say, wait a minute, let me take a step back because I missed something here, and I need to educate myself better so I can fully understand what it is I'm saying when I say something to this degree and to this level. And in this particular instance, he didn't do that. So again, it's the lost sheep can be lost. But I think this is a lost sheep who's okay with being lost and isn't necessarily trying to find some level of truth. And again, in the reflective nature of when you make a mistake like this, there's got to be something there that says, you know what, I'm gonna take some time. I'm gonna take a minute. Let me figure out where I missed the mark on this and how I can better educate myself. And this is what he seemingly has not done. But again, every time he does something like this, he doesn't seem to own that. You know what? I need to educate myself, and I need to surround myself with people who will help me understand this is why this is not appropriate, and this is why this is way off base.
Sean, two things I wanted to say too. We gonna go to the Stephen A. response to it. Is the problem that we have, and especially in this era, is pride and ego. And when it comes to that, when I say that, it's because people are sometimes with their pride and they feel like they got a platform, they got to always speak on something. If you're not educated on it enough, not have your research done on something enough, it's okay to just sit out something sometimes. You don't always have to speak on something. And then two, people got to learn how to let their ego go aside and stop thinking you always the smartest guy in the room and say, hey, you know what? I'm not educated on this. Okay, hey, teach me on this. I don't understand this. I'm asking to understand. I don't understand. The people can't do that, because when the perfect example, when I first read this quote, and I even asked, I just said, if I'm wrong, because I'm taking this, the first thing I just said is, if I'm wrong, taking this wrong, please tell me I'm wrong. Because in the sentence he said, they all challenge the status quo of racial barriers to fair play, race relations, and civil rights. And the point of that is being political, because you being the first Black champion, it's not because, he's just finally got talented enough to be the first Black champion. No, he didn't get the opportunity. It was politics stopping him from being a champion, brother. That's the point of the politics. Oh, Jackie Robinson finally get to play in the big leagues. It wasn't that he wasn't good enough to play in the big leagues. It was because of politics. Stop it. It's political. That's the point when people say it's political, when it comes to political politics in sports, brother. And that's what I said. Like, he contradicted himself right off the bat with this sentence. And I'm like, and that's why I even asked, because when I read it, when I told you earlier I was gonna look this up, and I looked at it and I read it, and I turned my head sideways like, that day you understand. So you playing a role like you do understand, or you're not smart enough to understand it. You just need to accept it, because that's right there your answer that makes it sports political. That's what makes sports political right there, brother. When you got it is still kind of going on. Look how long it took for Black people to race in NASCAR. Political. Look, come on, bro. Look at this. It's there. It's just there. But I don't want to spend too much crazy stuff, too much crazy time on this. But obviously, when he says sports show, and I get it, when it comes to Stephen A., I know he just got a contract, and people think he coming with the ego. But let's stop that, because I hate when people do this when it's clear cut that you taking a shot at him. Don't try to make it seem like, oh, bro, being big ego guy, think everybody talking about him. You sending shots at him when you said this, because you said this right after he brought the segment up on First Take. And obviously, Stephen A. Smith had a response to RG3. He pretty much said it was ignorant, and people at ESPN didn't like him. But the exact full quote and tag was that RG3, respecting my brother, you sound ignorant, you sound utterly clueless. Said Smith, first of all, when Jackie Robinson integrated baseball in 1947, are you trying to say race wasn't politicized in 1947 or beforehand? Like Branch Rickey for the Dodgers didn't specifically choose him because he knew he needed his temperament. As a former military man who exercised discipline as opposed to reacting violently to the racial venom that was thrown in his direction, you try to tell me politics have nothing to do with that?
So let me say a couple things really quickly, and I want people I think understand Jackie Robinson broke the color line in baseball, and we get it. There were certain reasons why Jackie Robinson was chosen to do it. But I think also, particularly that first year, and if you watch the movie 42, 42 focuses on that first year of Jackie Robinson in the major leagues. Jackie Robinson, just like anybody back then, particularly the players in the Negro Leagues, they didn't play in the Negro Leagues because they weren't good enough to play in the major leagues. They played in the Negro Leagues. There was a Negro Leagues because of segregation.
Mm-hmm.
So that's the first thing. But back to Jackie Robinson, Branch Rickey, who obviously made the move for Jackie Robinson, wanted Jackie Robinson part because he wanted someone who would not respond to all of the craziness he was going to endure that first year.
Which he wasn't crazy.
It was a lot. And again, the movie 42 just covers the surface, but a lot of that stuff in the movie, it happened. But it's just
probably worse stuff than that movie.
It was worse. It was bad. So that first year, he really didn't outwardly respond to it. As he got later in his career, he did start to respond to it. Don't get it twisted. He wasn't this, demure, I'm not going to say anything. Jackie Robinson was a fighter, right? Jackie Robinson got court-martialed or was brought up on court-martial charges because he was a fighter. He was someone who would stand up and speak up. He was never afraid of that part of it. And then when you look at some of the things he did in his life, the work in the civil rights movement, he co-founded a bank in Harlem that basically was built for African Americans to have access. He was a strong proponent of the Black Panther Party. A lot of people don't know that. Jackie Robinson was a fighter. Okay, so we cannot diminish who he was in the midst of talking about this. Jackie Robinson was also one who was very, very aware of what was going on in this country and got very involved in that. He put pressure on Dwight Eisenhower to send troops to Arkansas when they were trying to integrate the schools in Little Rock. Jackie Robinson did that. So let's not ever on any level discount who Jackie Robinson was. Jackie Robinson, he was a race man. And he wore that very proudly in his life. He never shied away from that at all. So when you say stuff like Jackie Robinson integrating baseball and the things to say that about someone who was very much about his race and helping those in his race as much as possible, don't ever do that. You can't do that.
You can't do that at all.
Do that. And again, I don't work at ESPN. I know people who have worked at ESPN. I know it's very political around there in terms of who gets to do what and blah, blah, blah. It's not about being liked. It's about being respected.
Yep.
And I think with Robert Griffin, I would have to say there were probably a lot of people there, particularly a lot of people who look like you and I, SB, who probably do not respect him. Just like they don't respect Sage Steele. They don't like Sage Steele, but you know what I mean? Like it's because of some of this type of nonsense. So so I just want to be very, very clear. Again, I understand him going off on Robert Griffin, but also you have access to Robert Griffin. Pull him to the side, have a conversation with him, educate him. Don't just use it just
the same thing he told LeBron to do for him.
Yeah.
the same thing that he told LeBron to do for him.
Right.
And then he said, LeBron, you can put me to the side, bro. No. You did the same thing to RG3.
Right, exactly. Because again, at the end of the day, for me, SB, what it'll always come down to is if we're in a public space or I have issue with something somebody says in a public space and I have access to them behind the scenes, I would reach out to them behind the scenes and say, hey, hit me up when you have a moment. When we have a moment to chat, let's talk. And I've done it in this YouTube space with some people. So, and I would hope if I said something that was off base or out of line or out of pocket, somebody would do the same thing for me. I try not to do that, as you know, but for the most part, I would hope someone would do that.
And then the last thing too that I want to say, because last thing, RG, then we got some football to talk about. People act like and I'm like RJ3. When they feel a certain way that they are worried about it might go against like this art barrier or make you look a certain way. No, it's the point of when you are clearly miseducated or disingenuous about it, or like you said, you play. I'm trying my best to keep it PG what I said, but you're dancing, because I feel strong about certain things too. But you already know I'm myself and I'm proud. But I could say if he wanted like example for it, I hate the fact that when we go overseas and when we play any sports that win gold medals, we are labeled Americans. But when we come back home, they label us by our color. I still think that's BS. I think that's bull. But we understand. But I'm smart enough to understand the game and what it is, and I'm never going to deny myself for being who I am, and I understand what my people go through. But I can still feel like that's BS. That if that's the case, if when I got to go to work and go win the gold medal, oh, I'm American here, and there. But when I come back home, I'm not treated like that. No, it should be the same thing. If we all supposed to be the same, make it that way. Don't have all these where we got to have these things in place where you feel like it's not fair in place because y'all don't treat us that way. But no, don't worry. When LeBron go overseas, oh yeah, proud American Hulk Hogan, American flag man. But when I'm back home, I'm still, just listen to Jay-Z 440. Then you understand what I'm saying. That's how I feel. And I feel like if that's the case, if we go somewhere else to be that way, we should be treated the same way at home. That's just me. But all RG3 got to do, even if he felt that certain way, at least the second half of that part. That's where you get lost. That's where you get lost to me. Ain't nothing wrong with having a strong opinion, brother, but still understand your foundation. That's what I was trying to say. And it's hard to kind of talk like how I want to say it because we don't really go on this side and you want to keep it PG because I could it's hard to find the words when it comes to that. But trying to get into some football real quick. Free agent Aaron Rodgers visit the Pittsburgh Steelers on Friday, but left the facility with no deal. Make this real. Is it time for Aaron Rodgers to retire? Because if he already went to Pittsburgh, couldn't get a deal, is either Pittsburgh a bust or Giants a bust? Is it just time to call it one for Aaron Rodgers?
I think it's more Pittsburgh or bust at this point for Aaron Rodgers. At this point, if you're Pitt, I think both of these sides probably need each other more than they're probably willing to admit.
Yeah.
Because I think Aaron Rodgers doesn't necessarily want to end his career with what kind of happened the last 2 years with the Jets. Obviously getting hurt the first year and then last year not, winning a lot of games. He played okay, particularly the second half of the season. He played better second half of the season. But, he needs, if he wants to continue to play, I think he needs a situation where it's not all about him and him being, the GM or anything of that nature. He needs a place. Yeah, he needs a place because, again, generally speaking, the Steeler way is the Steeler way. So when you walk in, you toe the line the Steeler way. They're not going to make a lot of concessions, for Aaron Rodgers, especially at this point in his career. But Pittsburgh's also in a situation where they need to try to – they haven't won a playoff game in 8 years. They're trying to win a playoff game at minimum and trying to get back to the Super Bowl at maximum and win a Super Bowl at maximum. Yeah. So if they feel like Aaron Rodgers gives them the best chance to do that, then it makes sense. But, at this point, I think it's one of those, he visited, he gets a chance to see the facility, gets a chance to move around a little bit, gain some comfort. They'll probably continue to have conversations. I'd be surprised if something doesn't happen before the draft. If it doesn't, then I would expect Pittsburgh to probably be very aggressive in the draft to try to maybe move up potentially in the first round to get, a Shedeur Sanders potentially. But, yeah, I think this is one of those things where it's still very fluid. But at some point, somebody's got to make a decision. And I think it's probably on this point more on Aaron Rodgers than it is on Pittsburgh.
The problem that I'm having, I think Aaron Rodgers needs to go ahead and retire because if he went to the Steelers and then leave out with a deal, that just literally tells me that he's not ready to accept the Steelers way and Aaron Rodgers' ego is still in the way. Skill-wise, Aaron Rodgers would be better for this team to win. Leadership-wise and everything else they need for the day-to-day is Russell Wilson, and I don't think Aaron Rodgers was going to be able to get them the day-to-day and accept the steal away. So once the Steelers sign Russell Wilson, then Aaron Rodgers will probably just go away and just go ahead and retire at the sunset. That's because that's the only way you die. The Steelers know they need you. And you went there and didn't get a deal. That's the only thing that's telling me is that he's not willing to accept the steal away. Now, Sean, we got a new playoff format.
Suggested.
Yeah. Which is crazy about this team doing it. Man, y'all been balling these last couple of years. For y'all to make a suggestion about the playoffs and y'all just started winning. Y'all just started winning Detroit Lions. Now y'all want to make.
There's a reason why they're the ones who did it, but we'll we
go. But okay, but the Detroit Lions have proposed a new postseason format that will allow wild card teams to be seated higher than divisional champions if the wild card team has a better regular season record. Agree or disagree, Sean?
I'm going to disagree with an asterisk.
Okay.
My disagreement with an asterisk is it can't just be the wild card team has a better record than the divisional winner. I think there's got to be a threshold for the divisional winner where you say the divisional winner's got to win at least 10 games.
Okay.
To host a playoff game at home as a divisional winner. But if you're a below 500 divisional winner, I don't think you should be guaranteed hosting a playoff game. I think you should be guaranteed a playoff spot because you won the division, but I don't think you should be guaranteed hosting a playoff game. I think the reason why Detroit is proposing this is because they know they are now in the toughest division in football, where you could have conceivably every team be above 500.
And get the playoffs.
Yes, and you had 3 teams from that division in the playoffs just this last year. So I think that's why you're seeing them propose it. So that, again, you can win 14 games and not win your division because of how good your division is. More than likely,
play a away game against the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, who's like 9 wins.
So again, my only. If they go to this, and again, I don't think it's a guarantee they are. I think just, again, they propose it as a rule change. I think the caveat has to be only if the division winner doesn't win 10 games or more. Because, again, if the division winner wins 12 games and the wild card team wins 14 games, that's not on the division winner because you're in a tough division. That's not their fault. But if that division winner wins 10 games, they're 10-7 or 11-6 or whatever, I think they should still be guaranteed a home playoff game. Less than that, I don't think it should be guaranteed. I think that's where it needs to be some wiggle room there. So that's my only caveat. Okay,
for me, it's funny that they suggested that, but for me, it's hard because at first I was thinking like, okay, it's not really necessarily fair because you don't play everybody. So your record you could have a favorable schedule. And then what about your record being more favorable than a division team? Because then should you add the toughness of schedule in there too now? Are we going to start doing that too? Or point differential with the team? What can you add? Only other suggestion I've seen that, like, I think you should do the wild card teams, division teams, and then once the playoffs start reseeded by record, then reseed everybody by record then. If that's the case, don't just do the division restack everybody from 1 to whatever 7. If that's the only way, I would be cool with accepting it. But is because I hope they want to suggest like the division champs not get in. That's the only thing that was like concerning me. But obviously they said the division champs should still stay in because I'm like how the scheduling is set up. You can't play everybody, and that's Detroit. If you get down Detroit, you in the tough division. Now, what if you that team at the end of with like only 10-11 wins, and now the Commanders who don't win the division because of the Eagles, should they be ahead of you too? If they ahead of you like by 1 game, because your division is tough, and the Commanders got probably like only 1 team to worry about. The Lions got 4 teams to worry about. So for me, only way I'm cool with this is just at the end of the day, you get your 7 teams in, and then you reorder everybody by record, and then you host the games like that. That's the only way I'll say. If you got to reorganize everybody, so if it could be possibly 2 teams could lose, it's cool. It can't just be like one team. That's the only thing I look at it. Now, Sean, off-season wish list and predictions. We got the NFC South edition. We got the Atlanta Falcons first. What you got, Sean?
Atlanta Falcons. So obviously coming off of a tough season, they were leading the division for a while there, went on a little streak where they didn't win and basically lost the division on the last day of the season, basically, but really the week before. Falcons don't really have any cap space. Their cap is very, very minimal to tight right now. Their team needs are cornerback, defensive tackle, edge rush, safety, and linebacker.
Everything on defense.
Everything on defense. Pretty much everything on defense. And you look at the resources they put in the offense between the draft and obviously what they did in free agency last year, signing Kirk Cousins. They've invested a lot of resources on the offensive side of the ball, so obviously they need to spend some focus on the defense. But the first thing Falcons need to do is find as cap friendly as possible a solution to get Kirk Cousins off the roster. I'm thinking more than likely it had to be probably after June 1st, just because of the cap hit. They paid Kirk Cousins $100 million basically for a season and the $10 million bonus they gave him this month. Basically $100 million. They don't want to get rid of Kirk Cousins for nothing. Obviously, they're not going to release him because, again, that's a lot of money.
Still gonna get paid.
Yeah. So you got to find. I think they got to find a solution, a cap-friendly solution to that as possible. Now, some of this to me is Kirk Cousins. If he wants to be a starter somewhere, he's got to work with them on that. Now, is he going to give any money back? Probably not. But can there be a restructure of his contract in a way that makes it less cap prohibitive for the Falcons to trade him somewhere? I think those are going to be very, very fluid and ongoing conversations. Again, I probably wouldn't expect to see anything happen until post June 1, just because the cap hit would be smaller by then, presumably so. But they got to find a way to get him off the roster. You don't want Michael Penix looking over his shoulder in any way. Yep. Michael Penix is your franchise quarterback. He is your starter. You make sure he's not, looking over his shoulder. And Michael Penix does not strike me as the type that he is going to do that anyway. But you just don't want the distraction potentially there. So that's first thing. Second thing, extend Drake London. Drake London has been a very solid, very, very good receiver for you these last 3 years. He is extension eligible. You're not paying him or Jamar Chase money because that's not where he is. I would use T. Higgins' contract probably as the model for his extension. Again, you want to get out in front of these extensions. Do not be kicking this can down the road a year and that stuff. Take care of him. Now, they're going to have, I think, projected like $65 million in cap space next offseason. The extension won't kick in for 2 years anyway because he's got 2 years left on his deal. But go ahead and extend him now. And do not extend Kyle Pitts. You can wait on Kyle Pitts, see what kind of season Kyle Pitts has. Again, maybe you may let him test the market, but I'm not going to extend Kyle Pitts just yet. Kyle Pitts since his rookie year has been maddeningly inconsistent. I'm not extending Kyle Pitts yet. And then the third thing I'm going to do is trade back in the first round. Right now they're picking in the middle of the first round. They don't have a lot of picks, so if they can trade back in the first round to accumulate more draft assets, and then they need to invest heavily in the defensive line, particularly the edge, but also they're getting a little long in the tooth at the defensive tackle position as well. They did move on from Grady Jarrett for cap reasons. They got to reinvest in the defensive line, and also for their secondary. They got 2 All-Pros in their secondary, and AJ Terrell and Jesse Bates, the safety. You need to find complementary guys in the secondary for those guys in this draft. Could it be Kevin Winston Jr. from Penn State at safety? Could it be Denzel Burke from Ohio State or Zay Alexander, the corner from LSU? You got to find complementary guys to go with your All-Pros in the secondary. So those are my Falcons offseason moves.
Okay, for me, I got I'm with you on that one. Trade back. You have no cap space. Only 4 picks in the draft. Trade back to get more assets to refill the roster. Mainly draft defense. Also, fully commit to Michael Penix. I don't know what you can do with Kirk Cousins because obviously with the cap situation, Kirk Cousins is going to hit regardless. Try to get some compensation for Kirk Cousins, mainly draft compensation to add more to picks because we're low on picks. Fully commit to Penix, and then say if all else fails, if I'm stuck with my first pick, draft either James Pierce Jr. from Tennessee or Mikal Williams from out of Georgia to buff up the D-line. That's what I would do if I'm Atlanta. Next up on the list, the Carolina Panthers.
Carolina's made some moves in free agency, did some things to particularly buff up their defense in free agency. Also did add Rico Dowdell from the Cowboys, proud to be there. They change the pace back with Chuba Hubbard, who they're really committed to. So they got about $14 million in cap space. Their team needs a cornerback, center, safety, edge, and wide receiver. So the first thing I have for them is they need to find a legit number 1 wide receiver for Bryce Young. They tried to go the veteran route with Adam Thielen. Obviously, they got Xavier Legette, who they like. I'm not sure if he's a number 1 receiver long term. I think he's really good and got some potential, but I think they got to find a legit number 1 receiver in this draft. Tito McMillan from Arizona is the number 1 receiver in this draft. Some questions about whether or not he'll be there when they pick, because they're picking at 8. I think the Raiders may be very well interested in him as well, and they're picking at 6, obviously. So they got to find a legit target outside the numbers for Bryce Young. Everything's got to be about let's make sure we're maximizing this 3rd year of Bryce Young. The second thing in conjunction with that is draft Jarrett Wilson, the center from Georgia. They need to fortify the interior of their line. They spent a lot of money last year on the 2 guards in free agency, and Hunt and Lewis. I think they've got to fortify that center position. Jarrett Wilson from Georgia, I think, would make a lot of sense. You think about shorter quarterbacks and Bryce Young. Who was Bryce Young being compared to? Coming out of Alabama, one of the comparisons was Drew Brees. When Drew Brees was very successful, the middle of that offensive line was tight. It was good. And, he had Jari Evans, he had Carl Nicks, the 2 best guards in the league. But he also had, Max Unger at center. They were really, really good in the middle of that line. You got to do the same thing for Bryce Young. And then the third thing in this draft is you got to draft your next Brian Burns. They didn't want to, pay Brian Burns. They ended up, tagging and trading him to the Giants. But they don't really have a dominant edge rusher that kind of dominates the way Brian Burns did. You got to try to find that in this draft. Again, whether it may be at 8. Again, you mentioned Mikal Williams from Georgia. It could be that Abdul Carter's probably is going to be gone by then. We're not even going to talk about him. But you really need to find a great edge rusher. You got a really great interior defensive lineman in Derek Brown. who's a monster up the middle. You need to find that complimentary edge rusher to him. So those will be my three things for the Carolina Panthers.
For me, I am cutting Adam Thielen. Cutting him gets a little more money. And then, if available, I'm drafting McMillan out of Arizona. And if McMillan is not available, try to get a cheap vet for the low. I think Adam Thielen was on like the tail end. You could probably see if you can get a Cooper or Diggs for the low, especially with cutting Thielen. I think you'll get a couple million that you could work with. Also, if McMillan's not available, I have to agree with you on that. They have not had nobody on that line of the presence of Brian Burns. So with that 8th pick, I either get Shamar Stewart or I get Mike Green to try to be my replacement for that. And then for the rest of the draft, my team is avoid the talent. Don't worry about needs. Take best available player every time. Best available player. You need more talent on this roster. Like you said, you need to take advantage of Bryce Young last year. So for the rest of the draft, I'm taking best available player. That's the main thing that I would do if I was the Carolina Panthers. Next up on the list, Sean, your New Orleans Saints. But you guys think your Saints? Yeah, I think you'll go off. I'll go first on this and knock man out of the way. I don't got nothing. Look, I literally wrote. I'm going to tell you what I wrote. Draft. No, what did it say? No. First thing, commit to the rebuild. Commit to the rebuild, and do not get scared away. Do not draft a quarterback to replace Rattler. Stick with Rattler and Carr this year and get your quarterback next year. That's literally all I said. Just commit to the rebuild. It's nothing. I looked at this. I was like, bro, it's nothing y'all could do. But you the Saints guy. Please tell me because I couldn't think of nothing. I'm like, bro, y'all.
I could have written a book on this, but I'll just say Saints have about $35 million in cap space after restructures. Again, the Saints are notorious for, being way over the cap, restructuring guys and getting under the cap, getting cap compliant. But all it's doing is pushing those cap charges further out. Team needs are offensive guard, wide receiver, cornerback, edge, running back, and quarterback.
Everything.
So the first thing I have on the list is prepare for a roster purge a year early. There's 15 players on the Saints roster that's age 30 and older. That's basically a third of your game day roster, which means you're getting older and it's time. So this draft for me is about preparing for a major roster turnover. Really, the next two drafts is you need to get ready for a roster turnover. This should be the team that you're going to see in 2025 should be very different. Should not look the same in 2026 and 2027. It should be a lot of new players on that roster, just given the age of some of those guys. So the second thing I have is be very open to trading back from number 9 in the draft. If Shedeur Sanders happens to fall, for example, which again, there's no telling at this point, where he may go. Obviously, we can talk about that at a later time. But if Shedeur Sanders happens to be on the board at 9 or is falling to you at 9, if you don't want to take Shedeur Sanders, that's your prerogative. But there's going to be some teams, I think, a little bit lower. And again, Pittsburgh comes to mind that may want to trade up for Shedeur Sanders. Be very open to that, but get everything. Don't be Nico Harrison. You get everything you can in a deal for that 9th pick. Like you have to, because again, you need as many draft assets as possible to rebuild, as you said, and to get ready for a total revamping of that roster. And the third thing I have is a term called embrace the suck. Embrace the suck. So basically, it was a term popularized during Operation Iraqi Freedom. Basically, what it means is there's going to be some hard times ahead. This is the nature of the beast. You got to embrace that that's a part of it, but also know that if you do what you're supposed to do, that good times are coming sooner than later. But you got to embrace, and they haven't. The problem with the Saints is they've not yet to embrace the suck. So at some point, you need to go ahead and embrace it, and let's get ready for a new and improved New Orleans Saints team. Because again, this continuing to hold on to the past and that's not it. It's time to get ready to embrace the suck. It's gonna happen. Get over it, and get prepared for that rough year. But also know that you got all these assets coming in, cap space, draft capital, things of that nature, so you can get ready for your next phase of New Orleans Saints football. So that's my third thing.
I like it. And then also, one thing I hear about New Orleans, as I said, like commit to the rebuild. Like, bro, you got all these old people on your roster and you trash. No, at least be trash. But you like, oh man, we got a future. These young guys look good. Just give them more time to be good. Not no old dudes who were like one more step out the league, man. Come on, man. But last but not least, Big Baker in the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. Sean, what you doing?
Tampa Bay. So Tampa Bay doesn't have a lot of cap space either. Their cap space is very limited. They've gone to re-sign some of their own guys, Chris Godwin, Levante David in particular. They brought in Hassan Reddick as well. So their team needs are cornerback, safety, edge, linebacker, and defensive tackle. Basically, they're pretty set on the offensive side of the football. They need to focus on, retooling their defense. So first thing I have for them is take the best defensive player on the board in round one, regardless of position. They could, very well be open to, moving around. They're picking, they're picking, at 20, I believe. And so, again, be open. If there's a guy you want, a defensive player you want, that you can get a few picks later to pick up some additional draft capital, be very open to that. But take the best defensive player available, regardless of position, in round one. It could be Malachi Starks at safety from Georgia. Again, you got Antoine Winfield. You pair those two together at safety, you got a really good safety duo for the next, 7 to 8 years potentially. Second, get a young linebacker to groom under Levante David. Levante David has been an ageless wonder these last few years, but it's getting time. His time is getting short, right? NFL stands for not for long. He ain't playing. He's not going to play much longer. So get a young linebacker to groom under Levante David. Someone like Smell London from Georgia could be, their third, fourth round maybe. Could it be a Barrett Carter from Clemson? Could it be Chris Paul from Ole Miss? Somebody like get a young linebacker to groom under Levante David so they can get some game and then, step in and take over for him sooner than later. And then the last thing I have is hedge your bet on Baker. Baker's in the last year of his deal. Or not the last year. I'm sorry. He's in the second year, coming up on the second year of a 3-year deal, which means after next season, you may have to extend him. Are you ready to extend Baker to pay him at that top 10 to 15 quarterback number, which again will probably be somewhere in the $48 to $50 million a year range? Because right now he's at about $33 million a season, which is a really good deal for him, for the team. But again, yesterday's price ain't today's price. So you got to hedge your bet on Baker. And if he's available later in this draft on day 3, take Kyle McCord from Syracuse, quarterback from Syracuse. Could be a nice developmental, prospect. Again, if Baker gets out of your price point, if you don't feel confident extending him, at that $50 million a year range, potentially after this season, you hedge your bet on Baker. So those are my 3 things for the Buccaneers.
I was definitely with you on the extend Baker early, because I don't think you're going to be in a good position with this division to get a solid quarterback for a replacement. I definitely put in big caps, don't overpay for Baker. I'm high on Baker. So like that $50 million, that's too high. But if he could get him at that 45-ish, I say extend Baker. That's good money. That's good money. My second thing is, if your first round pick get a young linebacker, get Jahad Campbell. I got Jahad Campbell. And then my next thing to do is, well, I had Chris Godwin on there, but then I looked up and then I realized, like, oh, wait, they already got him back. So, but then I just said, go defense heavy in draft. That's all I really put, because my third one was Chris Godwin. But then when I realized it, like, after, I was like, oh, wait, he already back. But, yeah, that's all I got for them. If I was doing the Buccaneers, my 3 things for the Buccaneers. That was Sean. Episode 52. Who you got? Who you got?
I got my favorite middle linebacker of the last 20 years.
Mm-hmm. Who you got?
Patrick Willis.
Ooh, okay. I like Patrick Willis. Patrick Willis is a good pick. Let me see. Yes, let me see who I can go. I mean, that was the obvious answer. I could go Ray. I think Ray like the obvious one. I was trying to avoid going Ray. Let me look at a basketball player list, because I don't want to go Ray Lewis, but I might say Ray Lewis. Who was a great basketball player with 52?
Was it Brad Miller? Did Brad Miller wear 52?
I think he wore 52 on the Bulls too, by the way. Yeah. Let's go. Let me see. Let me check out.
He did wear 52 on the Bulls.
Yeah, let's go there. I'm gonna take Brad Miller. Brad Miller Bulls, man. 52. Yes, he did. He did wear 52 on the Bulls. I'm gonna go Brad Miller 52 with the Bulls, man. Crazy dude, man. Appreciate you guys watching another great episode of Real Take So Fake the Base with SB and Sean Webb. And we will see you guys on the next one. Peace out.
Real takes over fake debates.